In this video, I'm going to share about the practice of rewilding, which is increasingly gaining popularity while raising a host of ethical dilemmas and questions of justice. I see rewilding as a remedy for some of the horror stories of the times that we're currently living in, namely the sixth mass extinction that scientists say we're entering, in which extinction rates today are 1,000 times the Earth's typical background extinction rate. Rewilding has this transformative potential because it can move humans from the position of being the agents of other species' extinctions to humans as helpers in other species' rebounding population numbers as they return from the brink of extinction and possibly even move towards flourishing. So, how does rewilding work? Well, it is a cousin of ecological restoration work. Rewilding is done through the deliberate and carefully observed reintroduction of animals and plants, especially high impact and keystone species, who are locally extinct from the places they traditionally lived. For example, the 2005 Pleistocene Rewilding Plan proposes the return of wild horses, lions, cheetahs, camels, giant tortoises, and elephants to the North American continent. Other, less ambitious plans that still have great ecological value might reintroduce beavers, quail, or shagbark hickory trees. Beavers, in particular, act as ecosystem engineers to provide widespread benefits, including to humans. Their dams slow the flow of water and act as flood mitigation, while allowing water to infiltrate into the surrounding soil and refill a depleted groundwater table. They also create habitat for other species. The slow pools of water formed by their dams can attract insects, and hence fish and birds who like to eat these insects, and larger animals that also prey on fish. Philosopher Andrea Gammon adds the following characteristics to rewilding. Rewilding aims to restore ecosystems to a state of self-sustained and dynamic functionality, in which human management becomes increasingly unnecessary. Rewilding is defended by a trophic cascade theory within the field of ecology. Rewilding often entails removing impediments to migratory patterns, such as dismantling dams for salmon or fences for bison. Rewilding reimagines the relationships between humans and non-humans, since it values the growing autonomy of non-human species to exist independent of human management. And finally, unlike ecological restoration that aims to achieve a specific result or a specific past ecosystem, which the work is mimicking to replicate, rewilding instead embraces the emergence of new ecological possibilities. Restoration is more past-focused, while rewilding is more future-focused. However, rewilding can research the species that used to live in a particular place, as a broad general guide for which species to reintroduce. It's just that rewilding is not set on perfectly replicating some past ecosystem. Of course, ethical issues abound with rewilding, and I'm now going to discuss a number of these in some detail. First, there are dilemmas with rewilding megafauna like lions or bears, as outlined in the ambitious Pleistocene rewilding plan. These animals likely don't appeal to the majority of folks who fear encounters with large predators in particular. Our culture has imagined that humans are outside of the ecological food chain. We can eat other animals, but not be eaten by them, and therefore we see it as dehumanizing to be the prey of other animals. This may be due to our culturally held fear of death, as well as the existential anxiety of our own vulnerability, because we're organisms with a body that's subject to risk and potential harm. Of course, this is quite understandable. I'm not in any rush to be consumed by a large predator. Furthermore, it likely turns out that giving large predators the respect they deserve means honoring their boundaries and space, and not encroaching on their habitat, range, and migration routes. Hence, if we rewilded large predators, it may be most ethical that we don't interact with them very often at all. While returning large predators to a region from which they're locally extinct is good for them and likely has positive impacts throughout the ecosystem, it's nonetheless the case that rewilding animals who are less dangerous to humans may provide for more interaction between us and them. Obvious enough, right? Next, there is a risk of using these animals in a problematic way, such that we're employing them simply as a tool to clean up the ecological mess that humans have created. Therefore, it's very important that rewilding is joined by narratives of these animals as partners in a shared vision of multi species flourishing. For example, we shouldn't think of beavers as our little workers or slaves, but rather as partners in which we share similar goals. Hence, we can practice honor, respect, admiration, gratitude, and care for these animals. Another important question is whose land is being used for rewilding? And what are the varying power balances and interests among the stakeholders? Are the benefits of rewilding equally distributed among people? And does anyone become disadvantaged by these reintroductions? For example, if mountain lions are being reintroduced to an area, are farmers able to weigh in on this decision since their herds might face increased predation and there's a potential threat to their economic livelihood? Another issue that Gammon raises is what happens to those cultural places or human built monuments that our society can hold so dear? Is it justified to demolish an old church or convert a cherished park in which people regularly walk for purposes of rewilding? Further, how can we rewild suburban and urban areas in which most people actually live? After all, most people do not live rurally, and we want people living in urban and suburban places to also be able to partake in the joys of rewilding. Of course, such suburban and urban rewilding would be with plants or animals that do not pose danger to people. Another question is, what level of human involvement are we comfortable with in the rewilding process? Are we only comfortable with initially catalyzing the process through the reintroduction and then following a hands-off approach? Or is it okay to do ongoing management and oversight of the reintroduced species? This question crops up because of a sense that with too much human management, the rewilded species are sort of treated more like zoo animals or the plants of a botanical garden, rather than wild species and their habitat. And some environmentalists find it more valuable for these species to have autonomy and independence from human involvement. In any case, rewilding projects that actively involve local community members have the potential to bring a fresh excitement to a place. This includes people connecting to a place through learning that landscape's ecological history, such as how the glaciers carved out the valleys whose streams they now fish in. Or it might include learning which animals historically lived there and why they're no longer around. Rewilding can also connect people to each other as stakeholders in the future of that place and whether that ecosystem will be cared for. Rewilding allows new relationships and experiences of awe and wonder to arise between humans and the animals observed. For example, imagine watching a beaver cut down a tree and build its dam. How cool would that be? Rewilding represents a scaling back of human dominion. It's the intentional ceding of power to animals that have been historically disenfranchised through excessive hunting, trapping, habitat loss, and the like. Rewilding restores power and autonomy, control over their lives, and it helps these animals live the way that they would like to live.